May 20th, 2013, a terrible F5 tornado tore through Moore, Oklahoma. As I understand it, a lot of people from here even went to go help in that effort. Because of that tornado, there was about $2 billion worth of damage done, 300 plus homes that were destroyed, and even 24 people that were confirmed dead as a result. How do you rebuild from something like this? How do you, in a very hopeless situation of home is gone, possessions are gone, people are displaced, maybe pets are moved somewhere else, how do you overcome a situation as hopeless as that? Well, if you look through the pictures concerning the Moore tornado, you see things like this. You find a lady like this looking for possessions through the rubble of a friend's house. You find people gathered at the cemetery to clean it up. You find children like this going through all of these supplies that had been donated by others to find something to pass the time. And you find family members and neighbors getting together to help one another out. In times of hopelessness like this, where it seems that the situation can't get any worse, where it seems that there's no way we're going to be able to recover, what you're going to find are people. You're going to find volunteers, you're going to find organizations, you're going to find church members and friends and family and neighbors and people from around the state and from states around that state where the tragedy happens. That's where the hope comes from, or the people that are around the situation. In Joshua chapter 22, we encounter a devastating situation, at the very least, for Israel. They have conquered and divided up the promised land. Everybody is headed towards the home that has been allotted to them. And the tribes that live on the eastern side of the Jordan are about to head back home. They conquered the eastern side of the Jordan first. They took care of that before they crossed over. But those tribes stuck with them and helped to make sure that all the western side was taken care of. And now they're heading back home. And on their way back home, they stop to build an altar of immense size, is what the text is going to tell us. The tribes on the western side hear about that, and they're concerned that the worst has already happened. They've just conquered the land, and now there are already their own people departing to serve idols. And so they go and address the situation as they know how, going and talking and figuring out what in the world is going on. We're going to read about the people of God, and this morning specifically observe 4 ways that the people of God act, how the people of God treat one another, and how those actions bring about hope. Here's the first one. It's going to be in verses 1 through 4 of Joshua 22. The people of God help each other. Here's what we read. At that time Joshua summoned the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh and said to them, "You have kept all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, and have obeyed my voice in all that I have commanded you. You have not forsaken your brothers these many days down to this day, but have been careful to keep the charge of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God has given rest to your brothers, as he promised them. Therefore turn and go to your tents in the land where your possession lies, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan." Here you have the tribes on the east getting ready to head back home because they, even though their land was freed up from the very beginning, they were asked, hey, even though you could stop and stay here and enjoy your home, would you continue on with the rest of the tribes and clear out the western side of the Jordan so that they could have rest more quickly? And they went along with it. They said, yeah, we're going to go with our brothers, make sure that the land is cleared out so that we can all enjoy the promised land together. And Joshua commends them for this and says, you have not forsaken your brothers these many days. You stuck with them. You helped them out to make sure that the land that belongs to all of us was cleared out so that we could all inhabit it together. The people of God help each other. This week, the people that live where I live in Manford have been concerned about a potential evacuation. My sister in Muskogee has prayed about, hey, letting us know we might have to be evacuated. We're waiting to see if somebody's going to knock on the door and tell us to leave. As soon as the information got out that there might be an evacuation needed in our area, before we even knew about it, a family from church here heard about it, sent us the information and said, if this happens, you've got a place to stay. The people of God help each other. You go look at the early part of the church in Acts chapter 2, and you've got all these families from all over Israel there in Jerusalem to enjoy Pentecost. And they stay longer than they intended to. And so money runs out, supplies run out. They don't have a place to stay. There are too many people hanging around for too long. And so the people of God start selling their stuff to provide food, to provide money, to provide clothing, to provide places to stay for all of these Christians, because that is what the people of God do. And I've seen that very thing here, not just with the evacuation thing mentioned moments ago, but I've seen people need to move, and we're there to help them out. Maybe that's not always a good thing if we're eager to move people around. It depends where they're going. But we're there to help. Trucks show up, we load it all in one time if we can and get it to where it needs to go and get it done quick. We help each other out. When somebody is in need of food, we provide food. We help them out. When somebody is in need of financial assistance with bills or with other things, we get the money and we go and help them out. That's what the people of God do. The people of God help each other. Now, in saying that the people of God help each other, that requires that the people who need help ask for that help. Make it known that they need help. You can't help other people if you don't know that they need help. I think sometimes we're too content to say, you know what, I don't want to burden anybody with my problem. I don't want to share the issues that I'm having with the other people of God. And what we're doing is not keeping them from being burdened. What we're doing is keeping the people of God from doing the thing that the people of God are supposed to do. Now, when we don't ask for help when we need it, we're denying the people of God the opportunity to do what God has asked them to do. That is to help each other. Here's the second. The people of God, they listen to each other. This is in verse 10. So the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh returned home, parting from the people of Israel at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the land of Gilead, their own land, of which they had possessed themselves by command of the Lord through Moses. And when they came to the region of the Jordan that is in the land of Canaan, the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh built there an altar by the Jordan, an altar of imposing size. And the people of Israel heard it, said, Behold, the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh have built the altar at the frontier of the land of Canaan, in the region about the Jordan, on the side that belongs to the people of Israel. And when the people of Israel heard it, the whole assembly of the people of Israel gathered at Shiloh to make war against them. We're going to stop there for just a second, because you've got the people returning home to the east. They stop to build this altar of imposing size. The text says that it's in the land of the people of Israel. So in their minds, you have Israelites departing from God after taking the land. They know what happens to false gods and the worshipers of the false gods. They just defeated them. In the eyes of those in the west, those that are headed towards the east are already departing from the Lord by building this altar. They assume that this is an altar for sacrifice to false gods, and it's concerning. So concerning to the point that in verse 12, they gather together, the tribes on the west, and they're ready to make war against those that fought with them not that long ago. Here's why they don't go to war. Starting back in verse 13. Then the people of Israel sent to the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh in the land of Gilead, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, and with him 10 chiefs, one from each of the tribal families of Israel, every one of them the head of a family among the clans of Israel. Why don't they go fight each other? They're prepared for war. They're prepared to do what's necessary in order to make sure that these false idols do not make inroads into their new promised land that they finally received and finally belongs to them. Why don't they go to war? because they listened to each other. It says there in verse 13, the people of Israel sent. They send the son of the priest and a representative of the 10 tribes that are living on the western side. And that is meant to say, here is the one who knows the law, and the 10 tribes on this side that are faithful to God and faithful to His law, and we're going to come and talk to you. Now, I do want us to notice this. They make assumptions about what's happening. They hear the word altar. They hear that it's an altar of imposing size, and their assumption is they're leaving God and going to one of these false gods. Now, that assumption is going to turn out to be incorrect. But I want you to notice this. That when they hear about what's going on, they don't rush to judgment. Now, they make an assumption about what's happening. They make an assumption about the things that are going on with this altar, but they don't just harshly react. They get their battle ready. They're ready to go fight if they need to, but before they react so harshly and so quickly, they're going to go listen and hear out the other side. If the people of God are going to listen to each other, it requires us to actually stop and hear what the other side has to say. It can be very easy to assume that we know what's going on with somebody else. When I hear about what somebody else is doing and it's not good, did you hear about what they said, or did you hear about what they were wearing? Did you see that? Did you hear about some of the people that they're hanging out with? It can be really easy to go, oh, that's not right. That's not good. That's a bad thing that they're doing. There's no good reason that they would ever do anything like that. It's easy to jump into assumptions that are the worst about other people. The people of God listen to each other. They hear each other out and see what the other has to say. The other side of that is the people of God are willing to talk so that people can listen to them. The people of God listen and give each other the benefit of the doubt, but the people of God also say, hey, I need to talk to somebody. I need you to listen to me. There is a trend with a lot of people, and I understand it. I understand why we do this, but I have a problem with it. There's this natural, maybe not natural inclination, but there's this idea that people would rather go and talk to those that they're not around very often. I'd rather go give my problems to a stranger, talk to them. Maybe it's a Christian at another church. Maybe it's a different group of people, somebody that I'm not going to see very often. Here's the thought process. If I share something troubling that's going on in my life with a minister or with some of the people here at church, I'm going to see them at least once a week, maybe more times than that. And what happens if they view me differently as a result? Or what if they let it slip? What if I tell the preacher and he uses it in a sermon? What happens then? What if we're standing in the middle of the foyer and somebody comes up, somebody I talk to, and they say, hey, how's everything going? And now everybody that's standing around us knows what's going on. I don't want to risk that happening. So I'm going to go talk to somebody that I can just, here are my problems, thank you for listening to me, and I'll probably never see them. They'll probably never see my family. They'll probably never see my spouse. And then I won't have to worry about what happens now with what I've told them. I understand the thought process behind that. But I have a problem with it, and the problem with it is that these are the people that we should be able to talk to. You should be able to talk to your family about what's going on. Yeah, but what if, the next time I see them, that they know that I'm struggling with this now? Yeah, that's what family deals with. We hear each other out, we listen to those things, and we work to deal with those things. We need to not be caught up in going to somebody else so that we don't run the risk of having it revealed to others. We should run to the people of God because they are there to help us and to listen to us. Here's number 3. The people of God are involved with each other. This is down in verse 22. At this point in our section, the people on the western side have gone and talked to the people on the eastern side. here's this altar, you built this altar, it's not good that you did this, it's dangerous that you've built this, it's going to be a punishment for all of us if you don't get this thing taken care of. And here in verse 22, the people on the east are saying, here's our side of the story. Verse 22. The mighty one, God the Lord, the mighty one, God the Lord, He knows. And let Israel itself know, if it was in rebellion or in breach of faith against the Lord, do not spare us today for building an altar to turn away from following the Lord. Or if we did so to offer burnt offerings or grain offerings or peace offerings on it, may the Lord Himself take vengeance. No, we did it from fear that in time to come, your children might say to our children, what have you to do with the Lord, the God of Israel? For the Lord has made the Jordan a boundary between us and you. You people of Reuben and people of Gad, you have no portion in the Lord. So your children might make our children cease to worship the Lord. Why did they build this altar? It wasn't to worship some false god. It was because they were afraid that at some point down the line, one generation on this side would say to the next generation on this side, if you were really Israel, you would actually be connected to us. You have these 10 tribes, they're all connected together. If you were really Israel, you'd be with us and not on the other side of the Jordan. They were afraid that future generations of God's people would say, you have no involvement with us or with our God. They were afraid about not being involved with each other. A couple things I want us to notice about this. Going back up to verse 20. In giving their side of the story, the Israel that's on the western side talking to the eastern side, they talk about Achan all the way back in Joshua 8, who was punished for stealing things that he should not have taken from one of the battles. And they remind him, the Israel on the east, he did not perish alone for his iniquity. His family had to deal with the punishment. And what they say in connection with that is, if you, as Israel, who are involved with us, you're as much Israel as we are, if you do this thing with the altar, this is going to not just affect you, but all of Israel. God's going to take it out on all of us. And so we can't let this altar stand. They remind Israel here, you are involved with us. And in punishment, we're all involved together. We've got to make sure that we keep each other accountable to keep the faith together. I want you to notice this as well. Verse 25. They're concerned that because the Jordan River makes a geographical boundary between them, which they can cross no problem. The Lord has brought them over different times. It's not an issue to cross. But they're concerned that as time moves forward, the tribes that are on the west will say, well, if you were in Israel, you wouldn't be on the other side of the Jordan. You're a different nation than we are. Because there's a geographical boundary that divides them in the Jordan River. There is no geographical boundary that divides the people of God. But what we do sometimes is create our own boundaries to divide each other. Their personality is not the same as mine, and so we're not really involved with each other. I don't like the way that person dresses, and so yeah, we're all Christians and we go to the same church, but we're not really involved together. We have different interests. We have different opinions about how things should work and how things should go, and so we don't really see eye to eye. We're not really involved with each other. They're concerned about this giant river that's actually dividing the land. We don't have that problem, but we make our own boundary lines instead. That's not what the people of God do. They were afraid that they were going to lose involvement with the people of God. And we happily set up boundaries between each other. It's not what the people of God do. The people of God are involved in each other's lives. We take care of each other. We help, we listen, we stay involved. Here's the last one. This is in verse 34, the last verse of this section. Both sides have said their piece. They've told their side of the story. The issue that's going on here, it's understood. They understand each other and where each other is. And in verse 34, they talk about this altar. The altar is going to stay. because now everybody understands what it's all about. Here's what they say in verse 34. The people of Reuben and the people of Gad called the altar witness, for they said, it is a witness between us that the Lord is God. I thought the altar was supposed to be a witness that these people on the eastern side and the people that are on the western side, that those people are together. It is. When they see the altar, they're going to remember they're together, because they're going to look at the altar and remember that the Lord is God. And that He's the God of the western side and the God of the people over on the eastern side. We're together in the Lord. It doesn't matter what boundary lines you can draw up. Personality differences, perspective differences, background differences, the way we do things, the things that we laugh at, what we find funny, what we find entertaining, what we find enjoyable, the way we dress. There are a lot of things that can divide and that we can focus on and say, this is a boundary, here's another boundary, here's another one. But at the end of the day, if you are a Christian, the Lord is your God. And He's the same Lord for every single one of us. And at the end of the day, we are united by Him. And all of these things that we can use to divide mean nothing. There's an actual river, Jordan, dividing these nations. But this reminder that the Lord is God can break that barrier down. What is it going to do with the barriers that we put up to divide one another? The people of God help. They listen to each other, they're involved, and they remember that the Lord binds them all together. Our previous 3 lessons, we looked at these ideas. The first, that if we want to be hope-filled people, if we want to overcome hopelessness, we've got to embrace the presence of God, to remember in these terrible, difficult situations that the Lord is right there with us. That as we stand staring up at the giant, and fearing about how we're going to overcome the giant or whether we can even overcome the giant, God is there with us, hand on shoulder, saying, you're going to beat this. I'm going to beat it with you. We talked about looking to and becoming hope-filled people, looking to what God has done in our past, seeing how God has always provided for us, and that He'll continue to do so in the future, even when it seems hopeless, like there's no way moving forward. Last week we talked about the things that God has provided for us. What God has put in your life, all the wonderful things that He gives us on a daily basis to look around and see, God gives this to me. I can be hopeful. All of those things can be found in the people of God. When you look at the people of God, you remember who God is and that God is with you. Because of Jesus' death, we all get to be here together. And when we see each other's face, it's not just a friend or somebody we know. It's somebody who Jesus died for, because the Lord is God. He's with us. When you look at the people around you, you share stories about, here's how God's delivered for me. And you remember, okay, well, if God has delivered for them, then He can do so for me. If God's helped these fellow brothers and sisters in their tough situations, then God can help me in my tough situations. And I can have hope. And obviously, aside from His Son and salvation, the greatest thing God has provided is a family. A spiritual family of people united by the death of Christ. And when we come together, we see not just a group of people, but people from all over with different backgrounds, experiences, personalities, opinions, that are all united together in Christ. He's provided each of us to one another. By show of hand, I was going to have everybody stand, and then I was told that might be a little bit too uncomfortable for a lot of people. I was going to have you stand and talk, so I'm not going to have you do that this morning. But if you'll raise your hand and keep it up, if you have ever had a difficult situation in your life where you either needed somebody to help you or you wish you had somebody to help you, would you raise your hand? Look around the room. Keep your hands up. I don't see a lot of hands down. Here's what happens when we get in a hopeless situation. You can put your hands down. Here's what happens when we get in a hopeless situation. All of a sudden, we forget that God's with us, even though He's been with us the whole time. We forget about God being near us. We get this tunnel vision about the problem, and that's the focus, the giant before us. That's where our attention is. We forget that God's with us. We forget all the things that God has delivered us from in the past. We forget about the things that God surrounds us with, and we sit there in the hopelessness and say, I am all alone. Did you see the hands that were up? You are not ever alone. You are surrounded by the people of God. And the people of God help each other. They listen to each other. And they're involved in each other's lives. You're not alone. These people that are in here, and there are a lot traveling. If we had everybody here, there'd be even more people with their hands raised saying, I've been in that place too. When you are in the hopeless situation and you think, nobody's gone through this before, nobody understands what's going on, I don't know what God's going to do, I don't know if anybody can help me, get all of that out of there. Because you are given God's presence, what He's done in your past, what He's provided you, and the people that He puts around you. I chose to do a series on being hope-filled because I knew that we needed it. I know that I've needed it. I know that I will need it. I know that a lot of you are there too. That at some point, if you're not there right now, you will find yourself in a situation where things feel hopeless. And I hope that even long after these sermons are forgotten and gone, that you remember the people that God has put in your life. And that you're not alone in dealing with your hopeless situation. There might be some of you right now, as we're talking, are thinking about the ways in your life that you are hopeless. That you feel like it couldn't get any worse from here. And maybe you feel exactly like we've discussed, I'm all alone. You're not. And I can tell you this. If you were to come to the front and say, I need prayers, be careful, because you're going to have tons of people come up to you, to hug you, to say, I'm going to be praying for you, to let you know that they love you, because that's what the people of God do. And if you try to avoid that and say, well, I'm just going to say something in private in the back, I'm going to ask for prayers there, be careful. Because the people of God that you tell, even if it's only one or two, they are going to probably hug you. They're going to pray for you. They're going to tell you how much they love you, because that's what the people of God do. And that's what the people of God here do. I don't know what you're dealing with. Maybe you're not dealing with anything right now. Maybe you are. You can be hope-filled. Look to the people God has put around you. And you'll find your way out of that hopelessness.